Picture this. It's December, the end of the next year, and you're scrolling through Zillow with a smug grin, watching home prices in Nevada cities plummet like a stone thrown into Lake Tahoe. Those same houses that seemed impossibly expensive just months earlier are now sporting "price reduced" stickers, like discount tags at a Black Friday sale. Sounds too good to be true? Well, buckle up, because the Silver State's housing market might be heading for a reality check that's been a long time coming. Nevada home values have already gone down 8.0% over the past year, and with homes for sale up 26.8% year over year as of this July. The writing's on the wall. While the median home price in Nevada currently sits at $455,000, several cities across the state are showing cracks in their seemingly bulletproof housing markets. From mining towns hanging on to their boom-era prices to desert communities that forgot water is actually important for long-term growth, these 10 Nevada cities are prime candidates for a housing market correction that'll make 2008 look like a gentle stumble. So are you ready to find out which Nevada cities might be offering fire sale prices by next year? Let's count down from number 10 to number 1, shall we? Number 10. Mesquite. Mesquite is Nevada's answer to the question, what if we built a city in the middle of nowhere and hoped people would come? This little desert gem has been riding high on California refugees fleeing high taxes and even higher housing costs. But the coming year might be the year reality comes knocking. With a current median home price hovering around $385,000, Mesquite has been punching above its weight class for years. But here's the thing about desert towns that rely heavily on retirees and out-of-state transplants. When the economy gets shaky, these are the first markets to feel the pinch. The city's population of just over 20,000 means there's not exactly a diverse economic base to fall back on when times get tough. The real kicker? Mesquite's housing market has been artificially inflated by folks treating it like a cheaper alternative to Las Vegas, but with only a handful of major employers and limited job growth prospects. It's essentially a bedroom community without the bedroom community perks. When push comes to shove, buyers are going to realize that living an hour from civilization might not be worth premium prices after all. Want to know which Nevada city is sitting pretty at number 9? Keep watching. It involves a lot of sagebrush and even more questionable real estate decisions. Number 9. Ely. Let's talk about Ely, the mining town that's been trying really hard to convince everyone it's not just another boom and bust story. With a population of barely 4,000 people, this remote outpost has somehow managed to maintain home prices around $320,000, which, let's be honest, is pretty impressive for a place where the nearest Starbucks is probably a 3-hour drive away. But here's where things get interesting. And by interesting, I mean concerning for current homeowners. Ely's economy is still heavily tied to mining, and we all know how stable that industry is, right? The Kennecott, Nevada copper mine has been the town's economic lifeline, but commodity prices are notoriously volatile. When copper prices inevitably take a tumble, and they will, because they always do, Ely's housing market is going to feel it harder than a miner's back after a 12-hour shift. The town has been trying to diversify with tourism because nothing says vacation destination like an old mining town in the middle of Nevada. But let's be real, most people visiting Ely are just passing through on their way to somewhere else. Without a solid economic foundation beyond mining, this town's housing prices are built on shakier ground than a condemned mine shaft. Let's move to number 8. Curious, what do we have at number 8? Well, it involves a lot of wind, tumbleweeds, and housing prices that make about as much sense as a screen door on a submarine. At number 8 is Fernley. Fernley likes to call itself an industrial hub, which is kind of like calling a gas station a transportation center. Technically true, but missing some important context. This Rust Belt wannabe has been banking on its proximity to Reno and its industrial park to justify median home prices around $425,000. The problem? The Industrial Revolution they were banking on is moving slower than traffic on I-80 during a snowstorm. With just under 20,000 residents, Fernley has been marketing itself as the affordable alternative to Reno. But affordable is relative when you're talking about a town where the most exciting thing that happens is watching freight trains pass by. The Tesla Gigafactory was supposed to be their golden ticket, bringing jobs and prosperity to the region, but most of those high-paying positions went to people who can afford to live closer to civilization. Here's the brutal truth. Fernley is essentially a warehouse town with suburban aspirations. When the logistics industry inevitably hits another rough patch, and it will, this town's housing market is going to deflate faster than a punctured air mattress. The combination of limited job diversity, mediocre amenities, and the growing realization that commuting to Reno from the middle of nowhere isn't actually that appealing is setting up Fernley for a reality check in the months to come. And now, number 7. This city is going to make you question everything you thought you knew about Nevada's hidden gems. Stick around. Number 7. Winnemucca. Winnemucca, the town that sounds like it should be selling casino buffets, but is actually trying to sell you on the idea that living in the middle of the Nevada desert is somehow a good investment. With median home prices around $340,000, this mining-dependent community has been riding the commodities wave like a drunk cowboy on a mechanical bull, and the next year might be when gravity finally wins. This town of roughly 8,000 people has built its entire economic identity around gold mining, which is great when gold prices are high and terrible when they're not. It's like building your retirement plan around lottery tickets. Exciting when you're winning, devastating when reality sets in. The Newmont mining operations have been keeping the town afloat, but mining companies have a funny habit of pulling out when profits dip, leaving towns like Winnemucca holding the bag. But wait, there's more. Winnemucca has also been trying to cash in on the Tesla effect, hoping that some of that gigafactory magic will trickle down to their little corner of nowhere. But it hasn't, and it won't. The town is too remote, too dependent on a single industry, and frankly, too forgettable to sustain these kinds of housing prices when the market corrects itself. If you think number 7 was rough, wait until you see what's happening at number 6. It's like watching someone try to surf a tsunami while blindfolded. Number 6. Elko. Welcome to Elko, where the deer and the antelope play, and apparently, so do wildly inflated housing prices. This northeastern Nevada town has somehow convinced itself that median home prices of $380,000 make sense for a place where the population hovers around 20,000 and the main entertainment options are watching cattle and complaining about the weather. Elko has been living in a mining-induced fever dream for years, with gold and other precious metals keeping the local economy humming along nicely. But here's the thing about mining towns. They're about as stable as a house of cards in a windstorm. When commodity prices tank, and they always do, eventually, places like Elko don't just experience a gentle market correction, they faceplant into economic reality. The town has been trying to diversify its economy, bless their hearts, but their idea of diversification is adding more mining companies and hoping for the best. It's like trying to create a balanced portfolio by buying different flavors of cryptocurrency. When the mining bust inevitably comes, because it always does in Nevada, Elko's housing market is going to crater faster than you can say. Ghost town. What's really going to hurt is when people realize that $380,000 can buy you a lot more house in places that have actual amenities, job opportunities, and don't require a 4-wheel drive just to get groceries in the winter. Ready to discover the number 5 spot? Let's just say it involves a lot of sagebrush, questionable city planning, and housing prices that would make a Vegas casino owner blush. Number 5. Fallon. Fallon, Nevada, where housing dreams go to die in the desert heat. This agricultural oasis has been punching way above its weight class with median home prices around $365,000, which is roughly $365,000 more than what makes sense for a town whose claim to fame is growing cantaloupes and hosting a naval air station. With a population of about 9,000 people, Fallon has been coasting on its status as a military town. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Military bases don't create housing booms, they create temporary population bumps. And when budget cuts come, these communities get hit harder than a target at Top Gun school. The town likes to brag about being Nevada's agricultural center, which is cute. But last time I checked, farming wasn't exactly driving luxury home sales. The Laughlin Valley has been struggling with water rights issues for years, and nothing says sustainable housing market, like a town that might run out of the one thing you need to actually live there. But here's the truth. Fallon has been marketing itself as an affordable alternative to Reno, but it's 60 miles away from anything resembling civilization. That's like saying Death Valley is an affordable alternative to Las Vegas. Technically true, but missing some important context about why people actually want to live somewhere. Number 4. Yerington. Buckle up for Yerington, the little town that could charge $335,000 for houses in what is essentially Nevada's version of the middle of nowhere. With fewer than 3,500 residents, this former copper mining town has been living in a fantasy world where location doesn't matter, and economic fundamentals are just suggestions. Yerington's economy died along with the copper mine back in the day, but somehow the housing prices missed that memo. The town has been trying to reinvent itself as a logistics hub because apparently every Nevada town thinks it's going to be the next Amazon distribution center. But the reality is that Yerington is just too small, too remote, and too lacking in infrastructure to support these kinds of housing prices. And the most telling sign that this market is due for a crash? Young families can't afford to live in the town where they grew up. When your local McDonald's workers can't afford local housing, you know the market has officially jumped the shark. It's like watching a ghost town charge Beverly Hills prices, entertaining for observers, devastating for anyone who actually bought into the hype. Here's what's really going to hurt. Yerington has been banking on California refugees who think anywhere in Nevada is a good investment. But when these buyers realize they paid premium prices for a town with no restaurants, no entertainment, and no job prospects, the exodus is going to be swift and brutal. Now that we have explored these 7 cities, get ready for the top 3? In fact, number 3 is going to make you wonder if the entire state has lost its collective mind when it comes to housing prices. Number 3. Carlin. All aboard the Hot Mess Express because we're pulling into Carlin Station, where housing prices have gone completely off the rails. This tiny railroad town of barely 2,400 people has somehow justified median home prices around $310,000, which is like charging champagne prices for box wine. Technically possible, but ethically questionable. Carlin's entire existence revolves around being a railroad junction and having a few gold mines nearby. That's it. That's the whole economic plan. It's like building your retirement strategy around finding loose change in couch cushions. Not exactly what you'd call diversified. When the mining companies inevitably scale back operations, because that's what mining companies do, Carlin is going to be left with a lot of expensive houses and not much else. The town has been trying to market itself as a historic railroad community to attract tourists, which is adorable. Nothing says thriving real estate market, like a town whose main selling point is that trains used to stop there more often. It's like trying to sell a house by bragging about how the previous owner only had 3 small fires, technically positive, but missing the bigger picture. What's really going to accelerate the crash in Carlin is the growing realization that you can buy a similar house in an actual city with actual amenities for the same price. When buyers figure out that $310,000 can get them a house somewhere that has more than one restaurant and a gas station, the Carlin exodus is going to make the California gold rush look like a leisurely stroll. If you think Carlin was also rough, listen to what we have up next. It's like watching someone try to sell a sandcastle at high tide. Number 2. West Wendover. The border town that apparently thinks it's Monaco instead of a casino pit stop on the Utah-Nevada line. With median home prices pushing $320,000, this town of 4,500 people has achieved the impressive feat of making living in the middle of the desert both expensive and boring. West Wendover's entire economy is based on Utahns crossing the border to gamble and buy lottery tickets, which is about as stable as a foundation built on quicksand. The town literally exists because Utah has stricter laws about fun. But here's the thing. Gambling tourists don't create sustainable housing markets. They create service industry jobs that barely pay enough to rent, let alone buy. The casino industry has been struggling for years, with online gambling eating into profits and younger generations showing less interest in throwing their money away in smoky rooms filled with sad slot machines. When the casinos inevitably scale back or close, West Wendover is going to be left with a lot of overpriced houses and no reason for anyone to live there. But here's the fact. West Wendover has been marketing itself as an affordable alternative to Salt Lake City, which is like saying a tent is an affordable alternative to a house. True, but you're still sleeping outside. The town is literally in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by salt flats and broken dreams, yet somehow convinced people to pay premium prices for the privilege of living there. So here we are. At number 1 is Laughlin, the place where dreams go to die in the desert sun. The crown jewel of Nevada's housing market disasters, the town that takes the gold medal in the Olympics, Laughlin. This Colorado River gambling destination has somehow convinced people that median home prices of $395,000 make sense for a retirement community that's essentially Las Vegas's sad, sunburned cousin. Laughlin is what happens when developers look at the middle of the desert and think, you know what this needs? Casinos and condos for people who think Vegas is too classy. This town of about 8,000 permanent residents has built its entire identity around being a cheaper alternative to Las Vegas. But here's the plot twist. Even the cheaper alternative has become ridiculously expensive. The town's economy is entirely dependent on aging gamblers from Arizona and California who drive across the desert to play penny slots and eat $4.99 prime rib dinners. That's not exactly what you'd call a growth industry. The average visitor to Laughlin is roughly 847 years old. Okay, maybe closer to 65, but still. And they're not exactly driving a real estate boom. They're driving Buicks and complaining about the cost of everything. Here's what's really going to sink. Laughlin's housing market. The town has been banking on California retirees fleeing high taxes and housing costs. But these buyers are starting to realize that saving money on taxes doesn't help much when you're living in a place where the main entertainment is watching tumbleweeds race across empty parking lots. The Colorado River is nice and all, but it's not nice enough to justify these prices for a town that's essentially a casino with a residential area attached. When the economic correction comes next year, Laughlin is going to be ground zero for the Nevada housing crash. The combination of an aging visitor base, limited economic diversity, and the growing realization that desert retirement communities might not be the goldmine everyone thought they were is going to create a perfect storm of plummeting property values. So, what's really driving this impending housing market correction across the Silver State? Let's pull back the curtain on the factors that are setting up Nevada for a spectacular housing price crash in the months to come. The California exodus is slowing down. For years, Nevada's housing market has been propped up by Californians fleeing high taxes and even higher housing costs. But here's the thing about exodus stories. They eventually end. While 7% of Americans indicated that they would choose to move to Nevada if money were no object, The reality is that money is an object, and Nevada's cost of living advantage is shrinking fast. Economic diversity. Most of these Nevada cities are one-trick ponies. Mining towns depend on commodity prices, casino towns depend on gambling tourism, and bedroom communities depend on people actually wanting to commute from the middle of nowhere. When any of these industries hiccup, the entire local housing market catches pneumonia. Water wars are coming. Here's an uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to talk about. Nevada is running out of water. Carson City has already seen price decreases, and this is just the beginning. As water becomes scarcer and more expensive, living in the desert becomes less attractive, especially in smaller communities that can't afford major infrastructure investments. Infrastructure reality check. Many of these smaller Nevada cities have been growing without corresponding infrastructure investments. Roads, schools, healthcare facilities, and basic services haven't kept pace with housing development. When buyers realize they're paying premium prices for substandard services, the market correction becomes inevitable. The remote work revolution is over. The pandemic-era remote work boom convinced a lot of people they could live anywhere, leading to housing price increases in previously undesirable locations. But as companies call workers back to the office and remote work becomes less common, people are going to want to live closer to actual jobs and amenities again. Rising interest rates and tightening credit. With 4 months of housing supply already showing market cooling, higher borrowing costs are going to make these overpriced Nevada homes even less affordable. When fewer people can qualify for mortgages, prices have to come down to meet demand. And finally, the speculator flush-out. Many of these markets have been inflated by speculators and investors who bought properties hoping to flip them or rent them out. When they realize there's no organic demand to support these price levels, the fire sale begins. The desert mirage finally fades. And there you have it, folks. The 10 Nevada cities that might finally bring some sanity back to housing prices. From Laughlin's casino-dependent delusions to Mesquite's middle-of-nowhere premium pricing, these markets have been living in a fantasy world where location doesn't matter, and economic fundamentals are just suggestions. The truth is, Nevada's housing market has been running on borrowed time and California money for years. With home values already down 8.0% statewide and inventory up 26.8% year-over-year, the correction is already underway. These 10 cities are just the canaries in the coal mine, signaling what's coming for overvalued markets across the Silver State. Remember, in real estate, what goes up in the desert heat usually comes down even faster. The only question is whether you'll be smart enough to get out before the mirage disappears completely, or if you'll be left holding a mortgage on a house in the middle of nowhere that's worth about as much as the sagebrush surrounding it. The desert always wins in the end. It's just a matter of time.